Good evening, all.
Good evening, Chandika. Let me make a small introduction.
Yeah.
Now, whatever is discussed here, someone might feel that this is too in depth, and then some are not relevant to Sri Lanka and all that thinking. But in my personal opinion, and then IBSL also feels the same, that Sri Lankan market should develop. So therefore, whatever the best codes of conduct, contents of the code of conducts that are being practiced in international standards are being discussed here.
Yes.
So you can settle down with whatever applicable to Sri Lanka, all right. But at the same time, we should and we must endeavor to we are aspiring to become one of the regional financial hubs. At the same time, looking at the best end practices of the international markets.
Yeah.
So please bear that in mind. Thank you.
Yeah, in one slide, I mentioned that Mr. Ratna, expectation of central bank is also that they are trying to regulate this market, because expectation of the expansion of the Sri Lankan market and
Yes.
be one of the financial hubs. So probably when the port city opens up, at least
Yes.
in another maybe 1 to 1.5 years time, this will be a fully fledged financial hub.
At least a regional center.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, you can start, Chandika.
Okay, guys. Honesty and fairness. Conduct business in honest and fair manner, safeguarding the integrity of the market. Fraudulent and deceptive, misleading, manipulative practices should be strictly forbidden. We have seen some of the people are doing that just for the sake of conclude the transaction and misleading some of the clients just for the transaction. This model code clearly says that you should not be getting into that kind of situation, and you should not mislead just for a transaction, right? In advising and acting on behalf of client and institutions should exercise utmost care, avoiding making misrepresentations, passing inaccurate or misleading information to the client. That is just to conclude the transaction, get that business, right? You should not give any misleading information just to conclude the transaction. And you have to ensure that client fully understand the nature of the product, potential and the risk that he is going to get into if we get into that contract, the transaction, right? So special important the complex transactions such as derivatives and new financial products, you have to make sure that he has understanding. And yesterday also I mentioned that you have to make sure that the person understand the product that he is getting into. You should not only look at the conclusion of the transaction for your maybe the fixed just to get the fixed brokerage or for your benefit. So you have to make sure the client understand the gravity of transaction that he is getting into, right? And you have to ensure that the nature explicitly of risk of proposed transaction are appropriate for the client, having regard their financial objectives, education background, investment experience, and financial literacy, like the jargons that we use. So these are things that you have to make sure he understands all your the financial the literacy jargon. He should have the financial literacy to understand what you're talking, right? So he should have a clear picture of what kind of a product that he's going to get into, right? So guidelines and the regulations issued by the authority should be taken into account when you are doing that, right? All market participants should acquaint themselves with their obligations, right? You have to make sure they are familiarized. They are familiar with their obligations also, that relevant to legal and regulatory requirements, right? For example, prohibition and prevention of bribery ordinance for an agent, normally an employee, right? So accept advantage without getting the permission or without informing the employer, the company, right? Because the top management should be aware of what kind of a transaction dealing that you have with your clients. If it is, especially if it is based on the principle, right? If it is a normal transaction that we do, the transaction like, you match the buyer and the seller, you have no problem. When you sometimes have to, face a situation where you will have to conclude transaction based on the principles. So that basically has to be informed to the prior to the conclusion of the transaction to the management, and get permission from them, and make them understand what kind of a transaction that you are going to get into, and service you are going to give the service to the client, right? There again, if the client, the person who basically has a principal, like, if he personally offers you, okay, you do this transaction at this price, but pass it on to me at this price, and we'll share the margin also, is not, it is prohibited. You should not get involved that kind of a transaction, and it is even the client is committing a offense on that, right? You are not supposed to get into those kind of transactions. Ensure that the nature, complexity of risks of the proposed transaction are appropriate for the client. So like I mentioned, you have to make sure that this is the real product, and this is what he really wants to get into, right? And you should know, and what kind of financial objectives that he has to get into this kind of transaction, and his knowledge about the transaction, and investment and experience of that person, right? You have to mindfully, you have to go through all these the screenings. Otherwise, it will be a problem when you conclude the transaction. Once you conclude the transaction, because you can't keep one party open once you do the transaction. So both parties has to be agreed to the transaction, right? So you have to mindfully, you have to check all these the points that you need to conclude before you do the transaction. Other requirements set out in the guidelines and the regulations is that the relevant authorities should be also taken into account when you are going through screening this, going through this process, right? Avoid fraud and other criminal activities. All institutions should take all necessary measures to prevent fraud and other criminal activities. So not only you, it basically not only the person who is involved in the transaction, it is the management responsibility also to see and look into whether the employees are following the guidelines, rules and regulations by the authorities, whether they are basically getting into the wrong track with the maybe with the supportive of the clients. You have the management also should look into that. So you have to do at least very frequent audits to minimize that, and you also should know, well, like if you do something without your knowledge, now you can't say I was not aware of that, because you are supposed to go through the model code to see, like I mentioned yesterday, what are the do's and don'ts, right? Money broker should be vigilant of any material conflict actual law perceived between their own interest, their responsibilities to their client must be disclosed with the relevant details. Such conflict to their clients should exist. So you have to yesterday also I mentioned this. You only have to cater to your client interest, not for your interest, right? And you have to safeguard the client's independence. Money broker should respond positively to client requests for a written list of principals who have material connection with them. So those are you have to actually get those the details in a document, and you have to keep it in your maybe office or inform the management. Otherwise, the management, if management doesn't know, not aware of what kind of transaction that you are going to get in with your client, end of the day you will also be in trouble. The consequences will be greater and in the latter part, right? Money broker should ensure that any deal involving connecting principal is conducted at, you have to, this here also says that you are not supposed to take any positions, right? So anything related to principal, you are basically, you got to be very mindful. You have to have some sort of a documentation if you are getting into any type of transaction which the principal is directly involved, right? And it should carry out regular audit and the compliance when you are running a when you conclude transactions with directly principal is involved, right? So I mentioned you have to the management has to do audit very regular basis to see whether these transactions are being done properly, right? So when it comes to entertainment and gifts, all the money brokers should formulate and enforce policy on receiving and giving entertainment and gifts. In Sri Lanka, not much, but other countries, this is also been taken from other global market code of conduct books. But what they say is like, because you should not do any entertainment or give any gifts where you are putting that person under obligation, right? So then when you do that, what will happen is the next working day, that person will be under obligation to give you a business whether even at a off the market rate, right? So these kind of things should not happen. You have to have the PR, but there's nowhere it says that you can't do entertainments or you can't give any gifts. But that has to be informed to the management, and management should be aware of what are the transactions, like the entertainment that you do and the gift that you give or receive. This is not only that the entertainment part that you do, the entertainments that you are being offered, right? You have to maintain the reputation of the institution also, personally, and the institution also. So regulator requirement is that basically gifts and entertainment that are just to be inappropriate or excessive, only there's a problem, right? So there's nothing called that you can't do anything, you cannot receive anything, right? So when you do like okay, meals and entertainment, there again meals and entertainment, so you can do entertainment in different ways, right? Whether this is a general entertainment or it's a excessive entertainment. So if it is best that is you, but end of the day, if somebody highlights it, this is not a normal entertainment, if someone finds it out, and now central bank also does the audit for all the money brokers annually, right? They will also can find out if they feel fishy about the entertainments or the gifts given or received, right? they will question you and the management. If you are not, if they feel, yeah, but if you can justify it, yes. But there again, you should not cross the line, right? And prohibition against offer of entertainment gift that likely to be perceived and as an improper inducement by the management. Yeah, so the authorities will not know, they can't quantify the X amount of entertainment can be done or X amount of gift can be given or received, right? So it is the best judge and the company according to all, maybe according to your capacity, you can do whatever you can do, entertainment, so you can give gifts, right? So end of the day, you should not do anything excessive. Someone to feel that this entertainment is excessive entertainment, and maybe for you it's not. For your management it's not. But if central bank questions you, you should have the answers to give the central bank and justify yourself why you did this kind of entertainment, right? And other thing is, like, you can't entertain, organize entertainment where the host is not around, or you can't go to an entertainment where the host is not around, right? So those things actually will have conflicts, issues after the event. So you must avoid these kind of entertainment offers, right? You must have a policy of the policy to do entertainments and the give or receive gifts. Deal with receipts, especially those which are judged to be excessive, but which cannot be declined without a cause, or causing the offense for the person, or if you are giving or if you are receiving, right? You should not make anybody feel uncomfortable trying to give something extraordinary. Or if somebody is giving you, you also should obviously you also will feel bad to accept something extraordinary. So these kind of things has to be very carefully handled. Either you have to get your high management advice, and you have to record all these entertainments and the gifts either receive or you give, because that none of these things cannot be your personal benefit. It is everything that you do is to build up the PR, to have a personal relationship, and have the close relationship with these people, or for that person to have a close relationship with you, right? So these things, okay, there is nothing for you to hide if it is a general thing. If it is something extraordinary, you tend to hide that. But now if you do an official entertainment, obviously the whatever the bills will be in office. So there may be not any limitation for you to do any entertainments in anybody, but you should know where to draw the line. If you cross the line and do the entertainment, then you can claim it from the company, but company will have to face a situation when central bank doing the audit. If they question, then why have you all done this kind of entertainment, right? So management should from time to time remind their staff of the prevention of bribery ordinance, which stipulates criminal penalties for accepting offering the advantages in prescribed circumstances. So we keep on telling you, you are not supposed to do excessive entertainment or receive excessive entertainment, or give or take, right? Also should keep it in your mind that you are not supposed to give anybody as a gift where it can be immediately can be cashed, right? So giving cash is also another kickback. That is also bribery, right? You have to make sure that you are not getting into this kind of that kind of transaction. with anybody, any benefit, that you are not supposed to cross that line, right? Sorry. Gambling. When it's come to gambling, like, you know, the management should have should have policies that prohibit gambling activities in the workplace. Workplace is not within the company. You will gamble with the gambling mean there are you can gamble with anybody, like, you know, maybe not if it is related to business, like let's say that spot is going to go up or money is going to come down, right? Something like that. So gambling mainly mentioned, gambling is that, and you don't get into anybody with gambling and putting cash money, right, which undermines the integrity of the institution. And personally, your professionalism and your personal integrity also will go down if something goes wrong. So please avoid gambling inside the office, right? This is something personal that you have to make sure that the senior management always has to advise the junior staff, right, not to expose themselves for debts where you cannot handle your debts, right? You have to, if your take home is X amount, you should not have X+1 debts. So then what will happen is that your commitment, your effort will not be 100% to the market. Then you will tend to find another avenue to make money for yourself, right? So you don't get into these kind of things. If you get stuck, you will definitely find a way out for your debts. So please make sure that you live within according to your income, right? So you don't get into any kind of bad investments, high risk, where you borrow from someone and invest in some products. It can be either financial or it can be equity or whatever. So basically you don't get into this kind of transactions, right? And unless okay, if it is the company who's going to be getting into this kind of transactions, you have to get the approval from the manager, because it is the company money that is going to. If company doesn't have, company also cannot borrow, and they will look at the ability. So if you have the ability, and you should have the you maybe have, if you have allocation is fine. If you are going to get into this kind of transactions, personally, if you are going to be answerable, you have to think twice, thrice, and get the approval from the higher management, right? And getting relatives involved in this transaction, the staff and their close relatives should not borrow or receive credit from the third party on a favorable basis, or on a term that are not at arm's length. So you got to be very careful of dealing with your debts, right? So be mindful. It can be company investment or whatever. You probably will do it on a let's say equity, but don't do this getting the third party involved, or giving a commitment to the third party that, okay, you give me this, I will make sure that you will get let's say 10%, 20% or whatever. So those kind of transactions basically are prohibited according to our code of conduct. Responsibility in relation to password control. So I think all you guys are aware that password controls, like especially the system and the voice recording, right? We have password controls. Central, because you are there are the sensitive informations in the recording and the system also. So they are everybody doesn't have the access to these systems. So management has distributed the responsibilities to A to handle the voice recording, B, C to handle the system, right? So and other even other areas also, if management feels that this cannot be give it to each and everybody to access to each and everybody, the management can have the password controls of in that area, right?
May I interrupt here, please?
Yes, sir.
Now there are 2 or 3 Parliament Acts and then also regulations issued by the central bank in the case of bankers. In the can you put the previous slide? Not indebtedness, about the security controls, password control.
Yeah.
Now on this subject, there are 2 or 3 Parliament Acts. At the same time, based on those Parliament Acts, one is Payment and Settlement Act, other one is I forget the name, but based on those Parliament Acts, Central Bank had issued security baseline security regulation, baseline security standard regulation. In that, now you were saying the handling of the voice record system. Handling of the voice record system should not be entrusted to anybody of the front office or dealing staff.
Yes.
There should be somebody else, maybe preferably head of back office or something. Or if you have
not the back officers, but central bank has told us is only the CEO, the head of the company should have the password for that.
Okay. I mean, the requirement under the regulation is that there should be a separate policy, security standard policy, incorporating the allocation of passwords, menu controls, and then starting from the entry to the company office or dealing room should be recorded. I guess your dealing rooms have the fingerprint or some other recording systems, right? So you must ensure that the doors will not open unless your fingerprint or the face identity or the whatever the identity is recorded. And at the time of departure from the office as well, there should be locking up,
access control,
departure time of the person involved. So then any given point in time where any transaction had taken place, you know who and who were in the
responsible for that
office, who were present in the dealing room or office. So such entry levels and then departure levels and then menu passwords levels and voice recording system management levels and your core banking system, core system and deal input and output and confirmation printing, such passwords should be very well managed. Do you all have a separate IT guy in your department, in your companies?
Maybe big companies. If money brokering company is a subsidiary company of anybody else, otherwise it is not practical for us to have a IT separate IT department to run this business.
Right. Anyway, such policies and then following or practicing the policy must be shown to the regulator. And in case of banks, it is the Payment and Settlement Department who supervises that.
Yeah.
So maybe in your case, the domestic operation department or any other delegated officer at the central bank might have the authority to, because there should be technical knowledge to decipher the, understand the codings.
Yes. Anyway, when they come for the annual reviews, sorry, the audit, they talk to me and ask who has the access control to the voice recorder and the system, who approves the front office, who approves the who enters the transaction, who approves the transaction. We have to have separate people for all these things.
Right. Okay.
So others can't jump and say, or others cannot say that if that person is not there, actually you can't. If that person is not, obviously I should be having the password.
Yeah.
So that to give basically give the central bank the access to check on all the records of the transaction. So if that person is not there, it is only the head of the company.
And an extension to that is now in case of a disaster or in case of a calamity that where you cannot, your office cannot be accessed to.
That's right.
Or maybe a bomb blast on by the way or something like that. And then the arrangements for you to, now in your case, the operation is very small.
Yeah.
So therefore, you might be able to load all the software systems into a laptop computer or something.
Yeah.
And then perform the activity of the transaction at a different location. And an extension to that is that you must explain under the policy how and when and who are the designated people to operate in such external places, and then how they are empowered to, and then the passwords, how they are allocated to at a different location. All right.
We already have that in place when there is a disaster, like it is going to be in one place, because we, like I said, sir, since our operation is not that big, we have no we can't invest on that kind of none of us invest for that kind of a situation. So money brokers,
it's not a very big cost now, because
yeah, it is you have to have a place, either rented place, whether you use it or not. In that case, you go to pay also, right? So we have a place down now. When we have signed an agreement with our service provider. When there is a situation like that, for all the money brokers, at least one or two people from each company to go to that place, and they will provide us the system. We basically take the backup on a diskette or the external drive and keep it in a remote place. Right. Most of the time, I take it from some guys are they are if the company is a subsidiary company or big company, they have separate places to stack all those stuff. Most of the people, okay, the small operations companies, they take it and they stack it in a different place. So only the location that we have an issue that we can't reserve a location, because we don't know when we are going to use that location. Like unlike the banks, they can at least try that disaster. They can go to the disaster recovery center occasionally and try that out. So we have the thing is we can't take the whole system there again, and the shifting is going to be another cost, at least $500,000 one time shifting. So those people we basically have agreement with them. At least they will put up some system for all of us. And then at that time there won't be a competition like nowadays that we have. Because we only that place is being provided us for us to give the service to the bank, right, and clients when there is a situation like that.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Now, if there's at least some arrangement where laptop or something like that loaded, and then somebody is entrusted,
That's right. Yeah.
accountable for it. That also speaks volumes of the controls.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
It has been done. Thank you, sir. The authorization should address the following things. Like I said, trading platforms, the type of transactions, instruments in the market that brokers engage, trading platforms like we actually don't have trading platforms, but we use the Reuters Messenger to communicate with the clients, and that basically have the access. You are being given personal password and the identification number. Then other counterparty knows who's communicating with them. So that is there, and confirmation, settlement, reporting procedures also been allocated to the people. So confirmation is done by back office, and settlement is done by the two counterparties. Double checking is done by another person. Transaction entering done by one person, approved by another person. So all these things has to be done. Otherwise, why they have given one person one responsibility? Because if you go to write the deal, enter the deal, take the confirmation, sign the confirmation, and send it to both parties. If it is only one person who's doing it, you will basically ignore the mistake of the second part, because you know that you feel that I'm entering the right transaction, I'm typing the right transaction. Human errors can happen. That why central bank, the model code says to divide the responsibilities. That is to minimize. If someone misses by there's a mistake, other person can pick that up, and then you can correct it. Otherwise, after sending all the confirmations, next day if you realize that there is a error in the rate, or there is error in the amount, you will be in trouble. So you have to have people assigned to handle all these areas: confirmation, concluding transaction, confirmation, settlement, fax confirmation, or checking with the banks and entering into the SIM and approving it to the SIM, informing central bank if something happens. So I don't think any of the company, only one person is doing all these things. There are people who have been assigned to do these things just to minimize the problems, issues, right? And relationship with the dealer and other market participants. Okay. When it comes to that relationship with the dealers, I'm sure that all the companies, brokers have been assigned or segregated certain institutions. That is to give a personalized service, right? So when that person is not there, we have to have a second tier to handle that. So the relationship with dealers and market participants means like you have to have a proper professional relationship where both parties' dignity will not go for a thing, right? So you have to clear very carefully have the relationship with these banks. You can't have emotional relationship with anybody. Actually, okay, since we are throughout the day in the dealing room and talking to all these people, they become personal friends also end of the day. But you must make sure that when it comes to business, not to mix up with this personal relationship and the business relationship, right? Institutions should have the proper policies and procedures for the appointment and authorization of staff engaging in broking, including both brokers and support staff. So we have that front office and the back office is separated, and you should not go and do the back office operation if you are in the front office. Now most of the places, like that is how the Sri Lankan markets are operated. To get an idea, most of the time the trainee is been seated at the back office to see some of the transaction, how these transactions have been done, and because he can get an idea, because otherwise he only will hear the jargon that we use to conclude transactions, right? So we have separate people, the back office, not only the money brokers, it's banks also has the separate people, front office, middle office, and the back office. So staff engaging in these areas, the management should decide who's operating front office, who's operating back office, right? You have to segregate them, okay? And provide clarity on the role of responsibility of the appointment, frontline, the broker, the managers, like this is what I said. Authorization in writing the transaction, concluding the transaction, writing the transaction, and they also should be given the adequate training. Ensure that the staff members are well aware of their roles and the responsibilities. Okay. Okay. The quoting prices. Every market participant to make very clear whether the price rate quoted is firm or merely indicative. Normally, sometimes before market starts, people quote indicative price, and that is not a dealable price, right? But you got to make sure that, because since you are not a the position market maker, you can't quote a price expecting someone to quote the same price. You, as a broker, what you are supposed to do is to get the market price. You should not put any attempt to start the market, open the market. Because if someone asks, can you quote me that price, you will not be able to quote. You can't quote indicative based on what that you are quoting indicative price. You have to have facts to do that also. So you got to be very careful of this price, quoting these prices, right? If you are quoting if you have to specifically mention whether it is the firm price or a indicative price, and you should have answers to give based on what you are quoting this indicative price also, right? And when you are quoting that price, let's say that you get a price from the market maker, you can quote it around, and you have to make sure that price is valid. For how long that price is going to be valid, and who are the parties who can deal on that price, and whether A and B can deal on the price, or C and B has the same pricing and the same amount. Because we in this market we have limitations, the institution limitations. When there is a limit issue, that they quote a different price than the market normal price. So you got to be very careful, because the one price is not valid across the board. So you got to be very careful of getting the price first day in the morning, getting the price and quoting the price around, right? So be very conscious when as soon as you get the price, to whom you are going to quote the price, right? And market participants should not make quotes which they have not intention of honoring. There can be people who will quote a price vaguely. Spot can be let's say 30-40. It is not a price. It is not a dealable price. You got to make sure that he's quoting a price to deal, right? You have to have reasonable grounds to suspect that other participants are engaging in the price that are threatening to compromise the integrity of the market. Because after quoting the price to someone, if someone asks you to deal with the price, if you can't go and get the price and honor the price, you will have a misunderstanding, that the relationship breakups, you know, they will lose the trust in you, right? So you have to handle it very carefully when you are going to quote a price to another, right? The, that now we have in Sri Lanka, we have it is OTC, over the OCD, over the counter market. When someone quotes a price to you, until he stays on line, the price is valid, right? Once he goes off the line, the price is not valid unless the counterparty, the client tells you, okay, you keep that price firm for 1 minute or 2 minutes or 5 minutes, right? Once you keep the line, the price is not valid. You have to get him online. If someone, you can always then you can think, how am I going to quote the price to others? You can always quote the price. This is the last quoted price, and you should make sure, and you should be very clear when you are quoting the price. Also, you don't go and say spot is 30, 40 last price I saw on spot is this, because spot is 30 for 40, that time lag, the counterparty can hit you on either side before you say last, right? You got to be very careful of quoting prices also. Last price on spot is this, spot is 30, 40 last. I can check on spot. There is nothing that I can check on spot, either last price or firm price. Okay, so be careful. If that party is not online, always quote a check price, right? Last and the check price. Dealer quoting a firm price rate has commitment to deal at that price and the rate. Okay, but the counterparty matters. A counterparty will deal with B, C, D, E. They are big banks, big institutions, big counterparties. IJK will be small banks. Comparatively, they have inside the limits for them. So the price for those people will be different. You got to clear that out from the price maker, whether you can deal, whether the price is valid to everybody. He will say, no, you check with me on check the name with me, right? Then you have to be very careful quoting this price to everybody, right? And if they want to see the price, you should be able to get that price from him. And if he will ask certain questions, can I deal the name? Is it a good name or is it a active name? You have to tell, but you are not supposed to give the name out before you get the price. Once you get the price only, you can check, I'm quoting this price. If he says no, don't quote to everybody, then you have to ask. But don't give list of names. You are not supposed to give more than one name at one time, right? If he can't deal the name, then put forward the second name. If he can't deal the second name, then put forward the third name. Without giving A, B, C, D, E, F, can you deal with A, B, C, D, E, F banks on that price? You are not supposed to give the names. Yeah. If you are doing it on a recorded line, when central bank is checking also, you will be penalized giving the names before you even conclude the transaction, right? So dealer quoting firm price has a commitment to deal on the price rate in marketable amount. So in our markets we always have to mention the amount that we are quoting the price that we are quoting, right? So dealer is he is compelled to honor. If he's online, if he's offline, he is not. He has no hold in the. You have no hold on the price. And before you quote the price, like I said, you go to check the names, limits, amounts, and whether that rate is valid for that counterparty. That counterparty also should have the interest in the particular product. Otherwise, if someone wants to see a spot 6 months difference, you don't go and show him a spot 1 year difference and go around and check for a spot 6 months again, right? If someone wants to buy 1 month, you don't go and show him the spot. You don't go and show the spot price. So there are certain guidelines that you to follow before you quote the price in the market, right? The prices, although the prices quoted in fast-moving markets are generally assumed to be for good only a very short mean, unless otherwise you are not holding on to the market maker, the price maker, that price is not valid at all, right? You have to check with that person if you are going to quote the price to someone who's interested in the price, right? So then he will say whether he is there on the price or not. And it is the price maker's responsibility also when you come back to him. Give me a minute. Let's see who is calling on this line. If he has changed the price, if he has changed the rate and the amount, he should mention. That should be the practice, but we hardly see that. But we see some of the people doing it in Sri Lanka. But overall, in markets, when the price is not there, either on the electronic platform or the voice box, they change the price. Even we do that. So we quote a spot price. If the market changes, we change the price and we quote the present price, marketable price, right? So you got to do that. You got to be you have to be very careful of quoting rate, and you have to. It's a very sensitive issue for you to find out whether the price is dealable, whether the counterparties are dealable. Amount rate also matters a lot. So after concluding transaction or doing the transaction, you can't say the price maker, okay, I will take or give you, this is the name, this is the amount. You got to be very careful of the amount and the rate and the counterparties when you are about to conclude the transaction. You can disclose the names only at the time of conclusion of the transaction, right? In the fast-moving market and illiquid market, dealers should clearly convey instructions to the money brokers regarding the time. Okay, so I mentioned this before. On the part of the money broker, it's always good to practice to check with the dealers from time to time on whether their quotes remain valid, right? So dealer has clear indication. So now even if someone is online, like they say price maker quote a spot price, right? So you have the spot price and you go around and quote the spot price to other people. You find a counterparty who's interested in that price, but there is a time lag. The price maker always can tell you your risk. When that person tells you your risk, you are not supposed to quote the price. Then you have to ask how now. Either he will say no change or he will change the price. That's the price. That's the valid price for you to quote to the counterparty, right? Or if that banker, the price maker doesn't tell you anything, if you feel that it took couple of minutes, you must say my risk, right? Then he can't change the price. If he's going to change the price, he will say change the price, right? So you got to practice this jargon, otherwise you will be in trouble, because anybody can always, because you are a third party, you get the price, quote the price. This time lag can lead to a situation. When he says mine, before you says mine, he will say off on the price. Then what do? Because you got to make that party feel that you are quoting the price online, right? So you got to use this jargon, my risk, so quoting the price. Then he if he's going to change the price, he will say check. Then you can say check, right? So if he says your is, you got to ask how now. If he has changed the price, he will say change the price or no change, right? Dealer should specify the size they intend to deal. Always now sometimes we quote $250 prices, $500 prices, million, $2 million, $5 million prices. But when you are quoting a price, you should be very clear and you should get the permission. The clear specifically you got to ask size, volume of that price, right? Otherwise you will be in trouble. If some people can deal on the price, not the volume, right? They will hit you on the price expecting that volume. If you can't deal with that volume, you have a situation, right? You always have to mention the volume when you are quoting a price, right? So if someone is willing to do a deal on the price, he should ask what amount. This practice has to be this has to be practiced by both parties, not only money broker, not only a banker, right? So you at least you initiate, then they will also get used to these jargons, and they will also, then you will see a proper professional market, right? So when someone quotes a price, you quote a price, and you all would have heard what amount is that price for. If someone says all your amount, it is not a good practice to deal on those jargons. All your amount, all yours, all mine. There is nothing like that, because there you don't know the limits that you have. First, you be clear, specifically quote the size of the amount, and if when you quote a price, so what amount is that price for? Or the price maker will quote you, I will quote you $1 price of this. So you don't have to go and ask, but sir, is it for 2 million? He has clearly indicated it is only for 1 million. If the other counterparty asks, can you quote me that price for 2 million? You don't say yes without getting the permission from the market maker. You have to ask him whether he can quote that price for 2 million. He will say no, only 1 million, but for 2 million this is the price. Then you have to convey that to the other party. Transactions can happen by way of communicating like that to minimize the misunderstandings, right? Market participants should be very specific in the use of dealing terms. In particular, they should state clearly. That's how I said, right? You got to be very careful of using the using this terminology, the jargons, right? For money market transactions, you have borrow and lend, right? But forward rate agreements, swaps, you pay and receive, right? Bonds, buy and sell, right? So you got to be very careful of the jargons that you use, because you don't go and ask the bank, sir, how much you can sell on money, right? So you don't go and ask the other party how much you can buy on money. So you have to use the proper jargon to use that. Mr. Ratnagar?
Yes.
Sir, seems like I had covered all.
Good. Anything in general that you want to state, Chandrika?
In general, actually, I prefer people using the business language at this the training level. So they should use the business language like English, because it is a global business language. Because there had been a lot of instances where when you go and quote a price, other counterparty says pennanna, When you show the price, that means the pennanna means show me. That means you have shown the interest. Sometimes the pennanna he basically trying this person because he doesn't have the confidence in this person whether he has the price or not. Pennanna balanda. Ganna balanda. Ganna balanda. There is nothing to show in the price, no. So you are interested. So you must use the proper jargon, use the business language when you are doing money. When you are having a chat, is fine. You can use whatever the language, the convenient language that you can have a conversation with your client. But especially when you are doing money brokering, about to do a transaction, make sure that you use the global language, which is English.
Okay.
Thank you very much, and I would leave this message with you all. To be a great money broker means not just adding value, but being value. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for tolerating my speech.
Thank you, Chandika. I think you have done a good job.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, good.
Guys, you all have anything to be clarified? Because Mr. Ratnagi will not clarify any of the things that I have mentioned here. So seems like they have enjoyed, sir. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Chandika. Thank you. Now, Chandika and all other friends, I have to also discuss with you a little bit of a logistical matter. Now we have come to the end of second semester as well. The first semester was done. You did a very good assignment. Second semester was done. You did a very good assignment. And we listened to the two central bank ladies. And also yesterday and today we listened to the president of Association Money Brokers. And also, more importantly, you listen to Mr. Karunaratne about the government securities, all the aspects, price calculations, dealing habits, the way the payments and settlements is done, the use of the RTGS system, script like security settlement system, then use of SWIFT, then how the bankers should maintain their portfolios, held to maturity, available for sale, held for trading, and then whenever they buy or sell into one of those portfolios, how the income is recognized, because they may not be material to your company, but at a time of dealing, you should be able to at least fathom out what is happening and where does the proceeds are being booked in when you buy and when you sell, where does the money goes, where the capital gains or capital losses are booked in, and how the accrued interests are computed. All that were discussed at length. And lastly, Mr. Mangal Karunaratne discussed, and then of course that was prepared jointly by me and Mr. Mangal Karunaratne, the malpractices of the dealing community. When I say dealing community, not only the bankers, it is a broking community as well, because we have seen in the recent past so many episodes of malpractices that came to light, and unfortunately one or two of our good friends are also involved, and they cannot be incorporated to the dealing community anymore. And there were mega calamities in our markets. So we, whilst discussing those things, we suggested that when you come across such incidents, how to behave. Because all matters is firstly reputation, your career, and your job. And when you step out of your office, you should be able to walk into another office if required, and then your career progression. All that is in mind. You will have to maintain a good reputation for yourself, good character, and which will contribute to the development of the community, the economy, your company, and your personal reputation. Finally, it is going to add to the economic value addition to the economy where you are born and then we are educated, and most likely where you are going to die as well after spending your entire life. So when you are born in a country and then when you are chosen this job, this industry, it is useless if you cannot contribute something. So with that in mind, only the second assignment I gave you, that to open up your thinking and then invite your visionary mind to think and write whatever the best possible development that you can suggest and impose, develop and impose, implement in our country. I mean, to tell the least, such good proposals, if brought forward to the authorities and then with amendments and whatever the adjustment that they had to do, then if they are implemented, I mean, you are going to get the credit. At the same time, everyone, including yourself, everyone in the community is going to benefit. And also everyone in the society is going to benefit. Business community, they are going to benefit. The consumers who import and export using the rates that are being quoted by you all, starting from the rates that are quoted by the money market, forex market, then the end community, consumer community is going to benefit. They are going to, through the process of price discovery and the liquidity provision, you are going to help them develop the market. So with all that, and whatever we discussed in the semester 1 as well, I have had a chat with Institute of Bankers, and we are just planning to have a examination, because the assessment criteria for the certificate of money broking issued by the Institute of Bankers is not only the assignment, but also scoring your marks on the exam. Unfortunately, due to pandemic reasons, travel restriction and so on, we could not have the first semester exam. But I'm suggesting to the Institute of Bankers and you all is that we will have one exam for semester 1 and 2 both together. Chandak, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
So we'll have, but it will be a MCQ, a multiple choice question exam. And I'm suggesting the date of 31st of July, Saturday. Now that Institute of Bankers had got their clearance to invite students to their premises now, because there were two infected persons found in their vicinity in the office rooms. Now they have sanitized about twice or thrice the entire building complex, and they have obtained the permission from the PHI's office or MOH office in that area to invite the students in small numbers for their classes and then especially for exams. So I'm suggesting 31st of July. That means from now on until 31st of July, you have time to revise the content of the syllabus that we discussed, semester 1 and 2 both, and sit for this MCQ examination. And the timing also tentatively, I can tell you, is 9 o'clock in the morning on the 31st of July. But the time duration and the number of questions that you have to answer, we'll let you know in due course. because it is going to be covering the syllabus of semester 1 and 2 both together. So therefore, it could be 30 questions, it could be 40 questions, it could be 50 questions, one of the two, one of the three. And then, I mean, everything will be very practical. You have to choose out of 3 or 4 or 5 options, the multiple choice questions. The choices, one of the choices is the correct one. So we have to tick the correct in the answer sheet and submit the answer sheet to the invigilator at that point at the Institute of Bankers on the 31st of July. And then the week after, we'll start the semester 3. So from today until 31st of July, it will be a study leave or vacation, Chandika, and for all the participants to go through and revise their syllabuses and the notes or whatever we have supplied you with many material, and they are also hosted on the Google Class, the portal. You can download them, read them, and I think in 1 or 2 cases or 3, 4 cases, I have given you sample MCQs as well. I have discussed the sample MCQs as well. So you know how the structure is going to be. So with that, I'm inviting you to ask any questions that you may have. If anyone has any question, you can ask.
So there is no substitute date for this if they miss this also. And you must understand that we basically get prior. We have to make prior arrangement for these exams because they can't have any number of people in the bank institution visiting at that time, right? So at any in any this case, if you are not being able to attend to this, you will not get a chance again, right, Mr. Ratnagar?
That's right. At least the semester 1 and 2 exam cannot be repeated.
Yeah.
Then you have to forego that mark and then face the semester 3 exam and semester 4 exam, and then obtain whatever the aggregate mark that will come in your way. And also, Chandika, I must tell you that giving credit to all the participants, there are 17 participants, right?
Yeah, 16.
All of them are the 17. All of them have done satisfactorily on the assignments, 2 assignments that they've done.
That's great. Good to hear that. Yeah, I also want all these guys to get through the exams because it will be a disadvantage again for them to sit for this money brokering exam, because if we don't have the number, we will not be able to organize this money brokering program. It is going to be a costly affair. So I want all these guys to put a effort at least for these next 2 weeks and get through the first 2 semesters.
Yes.
Otherwise, if you miss this, there is no way that you can catch up your marks in the 3rd, 4th, 5th semesters. Don't leave room for that. Make sure that you somehow make arrangements to sit for this exam and get through the exam. Otherwise, you will have a lot of pressure because you will have to catch up for the first and 2 semesters also.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So I hope nobody has any difficulties or any other problems or any other obstacles for them to prepare for the exam, and then on the 31st to visit at 9 o'clock in the morning to visit Institute of Bankers, and the time duration most probably will be about 2 hours. And then since there are MCQ questions, you have to read through and understand and tick one correct answer and submit the answer, and then submit the answer script and then just walk away.
So are they going to get are they going to be given 2 papers or one paper for both semesters?
I suggested one paper for both, covering both syllabuses of semester 1 and 2.
Okay.
That's the reason I said the number of questions
Are going to be more.
In the previous years was just 30.
30, yeah.
But now, because of syllabuses of 1 and 2 both covered, it might slightly increase the number of questions.
Okay.
Or else, with the alternative, we are not planned for that as yet. So let's hope. But for the moment, what I can tell you is that exam will be held on the 31st of July, Saturday, and 9 o'clock in the morning at the Institute of Bankers at Borella.
Yeah, guys, if you have any arrangement on that day, please have arrange. Make sure that you go for the exam, do the exam, and not get stressed out for the other semesters.
Yes. Yeah, as Chandika said, if you have prior arrangements made for 31st July, you have ample time to reschedule your other appointments.
The plans, yeah.
And then don't make any fresh new appointments on the 31st. And what I suggest is that please revise the material that we are given you. You are also able to luckily download all the lecture sessions that we conducted from the Google class and then listen to them over and over again, which Chandika and you all, when you sat for the exam, you didn't have.
Yeah, we did not have.
You just went to the class at the Institute of Bankers, listened to it, and went home.
Yeah.
But meeting each other, you all enjoyed.
Then sir, technology was not there, no, sir.
Yes, that's right. But now you have the technology benefit of downloading and listening to, and then going through the material that we are supplied to using the Google class and preparing yourself. So that is to say, myself, Mangala Karunaratne, and Chandika Leenage, and the Institute of Bankers expect you to score very high marks.
Definitely, yes. That is my expectation anyway. I don't want anybody to, get drunk on these the first two semesters.
Yes, yes. So I'm surprised no one asked any question. That means everybody's ready. Everybody ready for the big day, 31st of July.
Actually, they are very smart people. So they should get through this exam and at the highest level and get a good credit.
That is right. And thereafter, at a convocation or prize giving ceremony, you will receive the certificate from the Institute of Bankers that you have go through the certificate course, and you are one of the recipients of the certificate from the Institute of Bankers.
Yeah. So normally, Money Brokers Association organized the certification ceremony. So once everything has been done, maybe latter part of the year we'll be organizing the certification ceremony.
Now this time, Chandika, you have the liberty to organize that in Institute of Bankers building itself.
Yeah.
There are enough more rooms, enough even they have a big.
But we will have an issue there because normally it's a gathering that PR event that we organize starting with the certification ceremony. After that, we have a small gathering, get together.
Yeah, so, possible. It is possible.
But I don't think they will allow you to serve even a beer.
We can discuss that, but I think that is a way to save cost, Chandika.
I know.
In another venue, in a hotel or any other venue, you have to spend a lot of money now. But here, at least the venue is free.
So actually now this certification money brokering program started after about almost I think 3 years or
Yes,
4
that's
years,
right.
if I'm not mistaken. So the association will consider spending something to recognize their effort.
Yeah. But still,
Yeah.
you can if you have if you save money a lot, you can
Yeah.
even organize a gift.
I know. Yeah.
Even.
True. So I'll put it to the exco also.
Yeah.
And we can do that. It's not a problem.
As a venue, Institute of Bankers is a prestigious venue for that matter.
That's fine.
And for the Director General and the directors of the Institute of Bankers, it is their office complex. So they will not have to travel much. And for everybody else, I think it's a convenient location.
That's fine, no problem. We'll give it a thought, sir.
And vehicle parking also
there, yeah.
Is there any? So might as well use the concession of the.
True. Fair enough.
All right. So we are almost come to the end of today's sessions as well. So again, let me announce next 2 weeks, that is starting from today until 31st, there will be no classes. But you have the great responsibility of upgrading your knowledge, updating your knowledge.
That will be what you have done for last 2 semesters.
Yes. So please update your knowledge and go through the syllabuses, go through the material that we have shared with you, and listen to the discussion that we had with you. At the same time, just look for just common knowledge. I won't call it a general knowledge, but common knowledge, so that you can score many more marks. All right. So if there are no questions, Chandrika, shall we wish them good luck and then?
Yeah. Okay, guys. Then all the very best to you all. Do well.
So let me thank
you,
Mr. Chandrika Lenage for his
thank you, sir.
presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And
thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
See you, Mr.
See you. Thank you. Thanks for all the effort, Chandrika.
No problem, sir. Anytime.
Good.